Okay, we are back. Let's start the next case in Travel in Time. This will be case 10 out of 31. Crime and Punishment, in reference to the Dostoevsky novel. Being stranded in the 60s has been a roller coaster ride, Matthew. A murder at Woodstock, a moon landing which nearly didn't happen, a Hollywood starlet shot dead in Las Vegas. Never mind peace and love, all we've seen is murder and mayhem. We wouldn't even be stuck here if not for that mysterious time traveler who sabotaged our time machine. Even more concerning is what might be happening in 2029, Matthew. The message we left for Chief Scott asking him to send help was unanswered. Either the Chief never received the SOS, or he can't send help. Either way, something's wrong. Our only hope of getting home is to find Leonardo da Vinci's treatise, which contains the mathematical formula on which time travel is based. A task that would be a lot easier if the treatise wasn't in the hands of the Soviet ambassador Lev Romanov. Tensions between the US and the Soviet Union are running high, Matthew. If we get caught snooping around the Soviet embassy, there's no telling what'll happen. Which is why we've enlisted the help of Nicoletta Marconi to break into the embassy and retrieve the treatise. I don't like making alliances with criminals, Matthew, but given the circumstances, we have no choice. We've been in Washington, D.C. for 3 days while Marconi prepares for the heist, but it's time to rendezvous outside the embassy, so let's put on our uniforms, Matthew. It's about time, Officer Matthew. I was worried you weren't going to show. Funny you say that, Mrs. Marconi. I was thinking the same thing about you. Right, this is what we're going to do. I'll break in ahead of you and disable the security system. Once those lights go off, you can follow me inside. I hate this waiting, Matthew. What's happening in there? Ah, there go the lights. Marconi's disarmed the security system. Alright, Matthew, let's go. But be careful. I don't understand, Matthew. The security system's disabled. So where's Marconi? Matthew, what's... Halt! Murderers! Put your hands up! Murderers? We're police officers. You are American police? How did you get here so fast? We were passing by and saw the lights go out, so we came over to investigate. Your meddling instincts were correct. Ambassador Romanov has been killed right here in Soviet Embassy. We don't have manpower to investigate murder, so you Americans can do it, but we'll be watching. Phew! That was close, Matthew. I thought we were done for. But apparently Ambassador Romanov is dead, as if things weren't bad enough. We better investigate the crime scene as soon as they turn the lights back on. There it is. A gift. Lev Romanov is dead, all right, Matthew. It looks like he's been strangled. And there's still no sign of Marconi. Could she have killed the ambassador? Only the clues will tell. Like that pin you've picked up. It looks like it was torn from the victim's jacket during a struggle. Collecting a sample of that liquid on the pin might give us a lead on the assassin. And I agree. It's weird to find a wrapped gift out here addressed to the victim. He must have been carrying it. There's a locked wooden box inside. Let's open that up. I'll inform Amy of the ambassador's murder. Our search for Da Vinci's treatise will have to wait. I need to get some stars. But first, I'm going to examine the pin. Got it. Great, Matthew. Let's get that sample you collected off the victim's pin to Theo. Okay, 3 hours, and I'll see you for that. But first, I'm gonna get some stars. So sit tight, folks. Okay, I got myself up to 7 stars. Though I've gotten 8 of them, technically. Okay. 4, 8, 4, 4, 8. Oh no. Okay, wait. Wait a minute. Oh. 9, 8, 9, 9, 8. There we go, okay. Never mind that. 5, 8, 5, 5, 9. Okay. I got 4 and 9 mixed up. 8, 9, 8, 6, and 5. Okay, there. I redeemed myself. Kachina doll? There's a Russian doll inside that wooden box, Matthew, and it's custom made. It looks like Ambassador Romanov. So there must be more dolls inside. There's only one other doll. And you're right, it looks like Marina. But Marina wasn't born yet in 1969. Nobody from this timeline could have made a doll that looked like her. Unless she gave this doll to her grandfather. Did Marina disobey Amy's orders and went to see him? I agree, Matthew. We should ask Marina what's going on. Yikes. How terrible, Matthew. My grandfather has been murdered. It's strange to mourn someone who was already dead when I was a child. Yeah, that must feel weird. However, there's something we hope you can explain. We found the Russian dolls you gave him. Did you disobey Amy's direct orders? Yes, I did meet with my grandfather and gave him that gift. But I swear I didn't tell him who I was. I shouldn't have broken protocol, but I had to take the chance to meet him. I never knew him as a child. And you know about my strained relationship with my mother, Jack. I just wanted to see whether I'd feel any connection with my grandfather. So you gave him these Russian dolls. Thank God he didn't open them. Even though you never knew him, is there anything you can tell us about your grandfather? Is this how he died in our timeline? I don't know. My mother never spoke about him or my grandmother, Ekaterina. She accompanied my grandfather on his foreign postings. So you're saying the victim's wife, your grandmother, should be at the embassy? Then we should speak with her, Matthew. I wish I could join you, Matthew, but I promise I won't interfere anymore with my family. Mrs. Romanova, Officer Matthew has some questions about your late husband. The Americans and their questions. Lev, what a mess you've left me with. Can you think of anyone who might have wanted to harm your husband? My husband was an influential man with powerful enemies, and the man had wandering eyes. So you were aware of your husband's extramarital relationships? Of course I knew about Lev's women. I hope you're not suggesting I killed him because of those tramps. I didn't care about that. We were in love once, but our marriage had become nothing but show. My husband only wanted me around for cameras, and I only stayed for my daughter, Natasha. Now please excuse me, I had to play the grieving widow. Well, that was unexpected. Mrs. Romanova didn't seem particularly moved by her husband's murder. In any case, where to now, Matthew? I've got a lead for you, Matthew. I detected energy signatures coming from under the ambassador's front lawn. Energy signatures? Yes, there must be some sort of structure underground. If that's the case, Matthew, we should check out this underground structure. Moment, folks. All right. There we are. Oh, I didn't get it. This fallout shelter might come in handy, Matthew. If the Soviets find out we broke into the embassy on the night that the ambassador was murdered, there'll be hell to pay. And yikes! Careful with that weapon. It's a gun, a knife, and brass knuckles all in one. We better find out who this weapon belongs to. That engraving might hold the answer. And sure, let's search through those emergency supplies. Moment, folks. Okay. I got myself up to 10 stars, so let's take care of all this now. A headlamp. There was a headlamp buried in those supplies, Matthew. Wait, Nicoletta Marconi was wearing this lamp when she broke in. Which means she must be down here. Come on out, Marconi. We know you're hiding. Thank goodness it's you, Officer Matthew. There's Soviets everywhere. Somebody's been killed. Calm down, Mrs. Marconi. Just tell us how you ended up down here. All right, Marconi. What happened? You hopped over the embassy wall and left us high and dry. As soon as I got onto the property, I shut down the security system as planned. Then I literally stumbled upon a body in the driveway. If anyone caught me sneaking around, they'd think I'd done it, so I headed for cover. That's when I saw the hatch to this bunker, so I jumped down here to hide. How are we to know you didn't murder the ambassador for catching you in the embassy? That's ridiculous. I may be a thief, but I'm not a murderer. That remains to be seen. For now, it's best you stay down here, out of sight. Okay. Now the strange weapon. Oh no. Zavarazin. The name engraved on that weapon is Zavrazin. I wonder who that is. On second thought, Matthew, a weapon like this could only be used by the ambassador's security detail. I bet Zavrazin is one of them. Let's go find the victim's bodyguard. Ah, Officer Matthew, you are investigating Boss's murder. Have you caught the scoundrel? We will, don't you worry. But we'd like to know where you were when Mr. Romanov was murdered, because you certainly weren't guarding him. Shh, keep your voices down. You want me to get killed? This is total disaster. I was out back smoking cigarette when all this happened. When I came out front, the lights were off and Boss was dead. And you didn't see anyone around? No, nobody at all. This is bad. The ambassador dying on my watch. I'm lucky if I don't get fed to dogs. And I'll see you guys when these two are done. So for now, this is Matthew. Catch you again. Okay, we are back. Let's get the results of the strange substance first. Hey Matthew, have you seen Zara around? I wanted to show her my latest experiment. I'm cultivating flowers in the hydroponics bay. Last I heard she was down in the engine room with Kai. Oh right, she's down there a lot these days. And what am I, chopped liver? I come and see you all the time. Anyway, what's the word on that liquid Matthew found on the victim's pin? The results are in. That substance is glycerin, menthol, and sodium saccharin, the major constituents of breath spray. Breath spray? I use that all the time. The last thing we need cooped up in this time machine is bad breath. Apparently the killer's worried about bad breath too, because they left some behind when they tore away the victim's pin. Oral hygiene will be the least of the killer's worries once they're behind bars. We just can't catch a break, Matthew. We came to the embassy to find Da Vinci's treatise, but now the ambassador is on my slab. And he isn't the first person with the treatise to end up dead. Perhaps it's cursed. That's ridiculous, Janice. There's no such thing as curses. Tell that to the man I chased years ago to the Dark Ages, who ended up with a shrunken head. I've seen some crazy things on this job. Anyway, let's talk about this murder. The victim was strangled, and the wounds around his neck indicate the murder weapon was a thin metal wire. The weird thing is, I found a crumpled piece of paper shoved into the victim's mouth. The killer must have put it there. A piece of paper? It's a page the killer tore out of a book, Crime and Punishment to be exact. And there was a passage highlighted. The last moment had come. The last drops had to be drained. So the killer has read Crime and Punishment. You can bet your bottom ruble they'll be punished for this crime. Matthew, our heist at the Soviet embassy didn't go as planned. We wanted to retrieve the treatise that'll help us get home, but no sooner had we jumped the wall that the Soviet ambassador was murdered. Tensions between the US and the Soviets were already high. This incident is only going to make matters worse. Nicoletta Marconi claims she stumbled upon the body before hiding underground in that bunker. The victim's bodyguard, Zavrazin, says he was having a cigarette when his boss was killed, while the victim's wife seems hardly moved by his murder. And then there's Marina, who broke protocol to meet her grandfather. Matthew, I wanted to apologize again for disobeying orders. What I did was extremely dangerous. But I just realized something my grandfather said might help us solve his murder. Wow. We're going to find out what it is Marina was told in Chapter 2. I'm going to share these coins first. And we'll see you for Chapter 2 then. Okay, we have come back. Let's start Chapter 2 of Crime and Punishment. My grandfather mentioned he'd addressed the U.S. Congress earlier this week. He said it was an honor to speak at such an esteemed venue here in Washington. The U.S. Congress, if we're going to investigate there, we'll need to be careful not to disrupt the inner workings of American politics. The stakes right now are too high. But this is the lead we can't ignore, Matthew. I'll arrange clearance for you to gain access to Congress. Just tread carefully. And the Kachina dolls. One of which is Marina. And I got the first star. I know everyone's eager to get home, Matthew, but sometimes this job is quite a ride. Who would have imagined we'd be standing in the U.S. Congress in the 60s? Marina was right. The victim was here. That briefcase has his initials on it. It's pretty careless of the ambassador to leave his unlocked briefcase lying around. Who knows what state secrets are in there? All the more reason to search through it. And you think that torn newspaper is an important clue, Matthew? I'll grab the tape. Let's take care of everything first. Morse code message. For a second I thought that paper in the victim's briefcase was written in some ancient language, Matthew, but it's Morse code. I'd recognize the pattern of dots and dashes anywhere. Could this be a secret message, Matthew? Sensitive information that got the ambassador killed? Only one way to find out. Let's have Penelope translate this code. Okay. Cold War diplomacy. Good call with that newspaper, Matthew. There's a photo of the victim on the front page. The headline reads, Cold War Diplomacy. The ambassador shaking hands with this man, but the caption explaining who he is has been torn away. Let's take this newspaper back to the time machine and compare this photo to the local police database. Maybe we'll find a match. Alright. Oh. Didn't get the 9, but that's alright. Graham Winslow. The Washington database has returned a match on that newspaper photo, Matthew. This guy's a U.S. congressman named Graham Winslow. If Mr. Winslow was acquainted with the victim, then we should ask it some questions. Why, hello, officers. What can I do for you on this fine evening? Just give me a moment to freshen my breath. Congressman Winslow, Officer Matthews investigating the murder of Lev Romanov. Ambassador Romanov is dead? My word, that's terrible news. We understand you'd met the ambassador. Are you able to divulge what you spoke about? Of course. Those diplomatic meetings were a matter of public record. Romanov wanted my advice on the Soviet Union's upcoming trade negotiations with Egypt. Naturally, I obliged. I hoped receiving the Soviet ambassador would be seen as a gesture of goodwill to help ease the tensions between our two nations. Romanov's murder is the last thing I would want. This is a diplomatic nightmare of colossal proportions. And I'll see you guys when the Morse code message is done. Catch y'all soon. Okay, folks, we've come back. Let's get the results of the Morse code message. I know the prospect of nuclear war should frighten me, Matthew, but I've always found the Cold War romantic. Romantic? Yes, Soviets living on American soil, U.S. spies deep undercover in Mexico, or Moscow, deep undercover in Moscow, it's the perfect incubator for forbidden love. I've never really had a boyfriend. I can just picture some handsome Russian operative sending me secret love notes in Morse code. I can't say I've ever thought about it, Penelope, but speaking of Morse code, did you figure out what that message says? I did, and it's definitely not a love note. The message reads, "Meet me on the driveway at 8 p.m., Romanov. Your future depends on it." Did you hear that, Matthew? The ambassador was murdered on his driveway at approximately 8 p.m. which means this coded message was sent by the killer. The ambassador's assassin might be proficient with Morse code, but our message will be loud and clear when we put them behind bars. Meanwhile, let's continue our search elsewhere at the embassy and head back to the Fallout shelter. Okay. Got it. Look, Matthew, that's an old-fashioned polygraph machine. They were used during interrogations to determine whether someone was telling the truth. Wait a minute, my Cyrillic isn't as good as Marina's, but I know enough to see this polygraph test was conducted on the victim, Lev Romanov. Let's dust that faded polygraph test to see whether it's relevant to our case. And you're right, Matthew, that button must be what triggered the security alarm earlier. Which means whoever pushed that button either discovered the victim's body or even saw the murder take place. A sample of those pink fragments could identify a potential eyewitness. Okay. I think I'll get everything now. I was going to hold things up a little bit so I could get a few more stars, but I feel like I've got enough. Darn it, Matthew, there's nothing on the victim's polygraph test besides a bunch of wavy lines. Normally Marina would analyze this polygraph report, but under the circumstances, I think Orlando should do it. Let's have him examine this machine. Alright. Let's get those pink fragments you collected off that alarm button under the microscope, Matthew. Whoever left these fragments behind while pushing that button could be an eyewitness. Shrimp cocktail. Those pink fragments are small particles of shrimp, Matthew, from a shrimp cocktail. You're right, Nicoletta Marconi's been raving about shrimp cocktails ever since we were in Las Vegas, so she sounded the alarm? But why would Marconi deliberately trigger the alarm? She was supposed to be helping us find the Da Vinci's treatise, quietly. Let's ask Marconi and find out. We thought we had a deal, Marconi. You'd help us break into the embassy to steal Da Vinci's treatise, and we'd forget about your prior infractions. But it turns out you stabbed us in the back. You triggered the security alarm that ended the heist, setting the Soviet sights squarely on us. Because you betrayed me first. What are you talking about? As soon as I came across the body, I knew it was all a setup. It's obvious you wanted me to take the fall for that murder. All that nonsense about Da Vinci's treatise, it was merely a trap. Well, your ploy didn't work. You won't get away with this. Nobody was setting you up, and your alarm stunt hasn't achieved anything. You're stuck hiding out in the embassy's fallout shelter. You could get caught at any moment. I'll find a way out, don't you worry. You have to get up pretty early in the morning to outsmart a Marconi, and I can put that in Morse code if you don't understand it in plain English. We'll see you guys when the lie detector machine is done. Catch y'all soon. Okay, we are back. Let's get the results of the lie detector machine from Orlando. Although I'm a historian, Matthew, I do marvel at the wonders of technology, even something as antiquated as this polygraph machine. Antiquated? A device that can tell whether someone is lying? It's like magic. It's no magic. A polygraph measures a person's breathing, pulse, blood pressure, and perspiration to determine whether they're telling the truth. Here, let me hook you up and show you. When we were in Las Vegas, I believe I saw you enjoying a cocktail or two. Isn't that right? Oh no, I consume no alcoholic beverages. Now that, my dear, was a lie. But never mind, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Here's something less controversial. Who do you love most in the world? That's easy, my father. And that was a 100% truthful answer. We appreciate the demonstration, but what about Romanov's polygraph test? Well, it appears the ambassador was interrogated about his loyalty to the Kremlin. He was questioned about his diplomatic and political connections with American citizens. The Soviets needn't have worried. The victim passed his test with flying colors. But you'll be interested to know Romanov's polygraph test was administered by his bodyguard, Zavrazin. Zavrazin? Why would a bodyguard be authorized to conduct a polygraph test on behalf of the Kremlin? It's time we conducted our own interrogation, Matthew. Let's go grill Zavrazin. You've been holding out on us, Zavrazin. How does a mere bodyguard have the authority to conduct a polygraph test on a Soviet ambassador? Very shrewd, Officer Matthew. I suppose there's no point hiding it now. I wasn't just guarding the boss. I'm Kremlin operative. Here too. How you say, keep him in line. So you're some KGB agent assigned to ensure his continued loyalty? It's standard Soviet protocol for a man in Romanov's position. Sometimes people get too comfortable with American lifestyle. Hamburgers, gambling, movie stars in Las Vegas. The Kremlin has no tolerance for Yankee Doodle nonsense, so I conducted polygraph tests to confirm his loyalty was still towards Soviet Union. I transmitted the test results to Motherland in Morse code, and his allegiance was verified. And you're sure strangling your boss wasn't part of your duty to keep him in line? All you have are theories, Officer Matthew. As Dostoevsky says in Crime and Punishment, 100 suspicions don't make a proof. Until you have evidence of crime, leave me alone. Matthew, breaking into the Soviet embassy to steal Da Vinci's treatise was risky enough, but now we have a murder on our hands. According to Congressman Winslow, the ambassador had been working to strengthen ties with the Americans. Perhaps it was this diplomatic alliance that made Zavrazin, the KGB agent, question the victim's loyalty. Then there's Nicoletta Marconi, who thought we'd try to set her up for the murder, only to turn the tables on us. So far, we've been able to keep the Soviets at bay and contain this. If word got out about a Soviet ambassador killed on American soil, there'd be hell to pay. I hate to break it to you, Matthew, but it's already too late. News of the ambassador's murder has gotten out. It's all over the TV news. And we'll see you guys for Chapter 3 of Crime and Punishment. Don't go anywhere. Okay, we are back. Let's start Chapter 3 of Travel in Time, Crime and Punishment. Case 10. Oh boy. Colbert... I ain't gonna try to read that. Sorry, Matthew, let me translate. The Soviets blame the Americans for the ambassador's murder, saying they've been betrayed by the West. And in other broadcasts, the Soviets are threatening military action. The Cold War standoff was already tense, Matthew. Now that news of the murder is out, things could really start heating up. As if there wasn't enough pressure to solve this case. I agree, Matthew. The U.S. Congress is where the ambassador tried to keep the peace. Let's see if we can find something to defuse this crisis. That's better. Paper. I know about your acid trips. I own you. Whew, got it just in time. That film recorder you found belonged to the victim, Matthew. Let's unlock this camera in the time machine and see what was filmed. And look here. This is a blackmail letter. I know about your acid trips. I own you. Someone was being blackmailed for illicit drug use. But who sent this letter? Let's test it for fingerprints and find out. And I agree, Matthew. Let's take that torn paper back together. World War III might be a heartbeat away, but we can still prevent it by finding the ambassador's killer. Got it. This is a plane ticket, Matthew, and it belongs to the victim's wife, Ekaterina Romanova. Apparently, Ekaterina and her daughter had booked a one-way flight to Moscow before her husband was killed. Why was she leaving the country? Did she know something was about to happen? Mrs. Romanova needs to explain all of this. Okay, talk to Ekaterina Romanova. You've just caught me packing my bags, Officer Matthew. This breath spray I borrowed from Zavrazin is the last thing, then I'm leaving. We know you were trying to leave, even before your husband was killed. What are you running away from? It's not what you think. I begged my husband for months for us all to go back to the Soviet Union. I've had enough of America. I want to go home. I miss the food, the music, even the bleak frozen winters are better than staying here. But Lev wouldn't listen. He said he was important here. Like is written in Crime and Punishment, the fear of appearances is the first symptom of impotence. My husband never did anything unless it boosted his reputation. So I sent a message in Morse code to my parents, telling them my daughter and I were coming home. But Lev tore up that ticket, saying we'd be leaving over his dead body. Which is exactly what you're trying to do. If Officer Matthew discovers you killed your husband, it'll be a long time before you get home. Let's run this film from the victim's camera through the projector, Matthew. Whatever's on here might help solve his murder. I'm flattered a journalist is interested in speaking with me. Please ask your questions. Tell me your thoughts on the recent moon landing. Looks like the Americans beat you to it. Bah, the moon, just a big hunk of rock. The galaxy is full of planets. Papa, look at my... Sure, Poberry. Can't you see your father is busy, Natasha? I warned you never to interrupt my work. You shouldn't treat your daughter so harshly, Ambassador. She wasn't disturbing anything. Who are you to give me advice on how I should raise my child? This interview is over. Now get out. Oh boy. Marina told us she met with her grandfather, but said nothing about any argument. This was bad, Matthew. We need to have another talk with Marina. Things seem to be going from bad to worse, Marina. First we learn you secretly spoke to your grandfather, then it turns out you argued. What? How do you know about that? But you're right, we fought. I'd freshened up with some breath spray and makeup pretending to be a journalist. At one point my grandfather's daughter walked in, my mother, who was only a child in this time period, and my grandfather flew off the handle. I recognized his tone instantly. It was the same kind of verbal abuse my mother would hurl at me. I just snapped. I wanted Romanov to stop mistreating his daughter the way she would one day mistreat me. It's always been the same with my family. As Dostoevsky says in Crime and Punishment, when reason fails, the devil helps. Let's just hope your reason didn't fail, Marina. Got it. There are fingerprints all over this blackmail message, Matthew, but they're a little smudged. If Kai can salvage some of these prints, maybe we'll find a match. If this letter is connected to the ambassador's murder, we need to know about it. This is 9 hours, I bet. Yep, I'll see you guys when this is done. So for now, this is Matthew. Catch you later. Okay, we are back. I'm going to go ahead and speed up this, even though it's only 2 and it's only 33 minutes. But I got other plans tomorrow. I'm glad you sent me these fingerprints, Matthew. Anything to distract me from our malfunctioning time machine. I'm so restless, I just want to get going. We'll have Da Vinci's treatise soon enough, Kai. But right now, we need your report on those prints. Right. I found 2 sets of fingerprints. One belonging to your victim, the other belonging to that congressman, Graham Winslow. So the victim and the congressman were involved in some sort of drug scandal, but who was doing the blackmailing? The pattern of the fingerprints can tell us that. The congressman's prints are only around the edges of the paper, meaning he held it in his hands. But the victim's fingerprints are all over the cutout letters themselves, even on the back, which means it was Ambassador Romanov who glued them to the message. So Winslow is being blackmailed by the ambassador. Let's ask the congressman what was going on. Ah, Officer Matthew, I'm just reading my favorite book, Crime and Punishment, to find some common ground with the Soviets. We're certainly in a pickle right now. You're the one in a pickle, Congressman. We know the ambassador was blackmailing you because of your drug habit. How did you know about that? Aw, shoot. There's no point lying to you now. Romanov found out about my recreational activities. He demanded I lift U.S. trade sanctions against the Soviet Union or he'd go to the press. I don't have the authority to do that. What did he expect me to do? Send a Morse code message to the president? I was in a mighty bind. I couldn't let the truth get out. If it turns out you murdered the ambassador to preserve your reputation, Officer Matthew will find out. I know you're under a tremendous amount of pressure, Matthew, but the stakes just got higher. The Soviets are preparing for war. The Kremlin just issued a warning. If Romanov's killer isn't brought to justice within the next 2 hours, they'll order a nuclear strike. Oh God, Matthew, we're running out of time. We still don't know who murdered Romanov. Was it the victim's wife, desperate to flee the U.S. against the ambassador's wishes? Or Congressman Winslow, who was being blackmailed by the victim over his drug use? Could he have been pushed over the edge? I just hope for everyone's sake that it wasn't Marina, who was furious with her grandfather for mistreating his family. I agree, Matthew, we need more evidence. which we won't find while panicking in the time machine. Let's do another sweep of the crime scene. Rosebush is the last clue. Please tell me you found some clues, Matthew. If we don't catch the ambassador's killer soon, we'll all be obliterated. Our time machine won't protect us from a nuclear strike. You think that copy of Crime and Punishment belongs to the killer? Of course. The page we found in the victim's mouth is torn out. A sample of that creamy substance smudged inside the book might help us identify the killer. And I'll let you search through that rose bush, Matthew. Careful of those thorns. Got it. Got it. Let's rush that creamy substance you collected off the killer's book to the lab, Matthew. The sooner we bring the killer to justice, the sooner we can prevent World War III. That was easy. Garrote watch. There was a blood-stained watch in that rose bush, Matthew. That's strange. The victim was still wearing his watch. Wait, this is a garrote watch. By pulling this wire out, the watch becomes a deadly weapon. The killer must have used this to strangle the victim. Let's have Janice compare this watch to the victim's wounds. And with that being said, I'll see you guys when this is done. When both of these are finished, rather. And I'll see you all soon. Okay, we are back. Let's get the results of the white substance. Let's put a killer behind bars. My analysis of that sample you collected from the killer's book will be ready in a second, Matthew. Astro is double-checking the results. Just as I concluded, that substance contains paraffin, hexylene glycol, and a range of other chemicals. Simply put, it's a skin cream, specifically used to treat facial moles. The killer must have smudged their mole cream on the pages of their book. So the killer has a mole, Matthew. They can try to hide behind their lies, but their guilt will be written all over their face. I know we're running down to the wire, Matthew, so I'll keep this brief. And speaking of wires, there's no doubt this garrote watch is the murder weapon. The blood and skin cells on the cord match the victim. And the ambassador's neck wounds are consistent with this sharp wire. That's pretty sneaky, Matthew. The killer would have simply stepped behind the victim, extended the cord, and choked him out. Sneaky, maybe, but not foolproof. I collected a sample of skin cells from the watch band that would have come from the killer's wrist. I couldn't get a complete DNA profile, but the cell degradation indicates the killer is more than 40 years old. So the killer is older than 40, Matthew. Old enough to know that crime doesn't pay. This has been one nerve-wracking case, Matthew, but we finally gathered enough proof to arrest the assassin. Handing them over to the authorities will hopefully appease the Soviets so they'll call off their nuclear strike. It's not Marina. It isn't Ekaterina. It's not Nicoletta Marconi. Not Zavrazin. Yep, it's Graham Winslow, the congressman. Congressman Winslow, after all your talk about the ambassador's murder being a diplomatic crisis, it turns out you're the cause of it all. Well, aren't we in a tizzy? Why would you ever dream of such a thing? I'm no murderer. We know it was you. Romanov's knowledge of your drug use threatened your career and your reputation, so you silenced him. You'd best have proof for these wild accusations, Officer Matthew. Remember who you're talking to. We've got evidence, all right. You sent the ambassador a coded message to meet him on the embassy driveway. Once he'd arrived, you snuck up behind him and strangled him with your garrote watch before stuffing his mouth with a page from your favorite book. Admit it, Winslow. We have you over a barrel. All right, fine. I murdered that miserable Rusky. He had some nerve, daring to live on American soil. It's a national disgrace. There can be no peace with the Soviets. You're saying you want a conflict with the Soviet Union? Does a one-legged duck swim in a circle? Of course I want an armed conflict. We can't just sit back in this stalemate. This so-called Cold War could last decades. The Soviets with their space race and their nuclear arms, we must take them out now. And I knew just how to do it. I knew killing Romanov would give the Soviets an excuse to launch an attack, and it worked. We're just hours away from an all-out war, and the US will emerge victorious. That's insane! Deliberately provoking a nuclear war. Surely the Soviets will see through your ploy. You're so naive, Officer Matthew. It doesn't matter what happens to me. The Soviets won't back down. There's no stopping this war. I've heard enough, Congressman. You can tell it to the judge. You're going away for a long time. I can hardly believe this, Matthew. A U.S. congressman murdered a foreign diplomat to trigger a nuclear war, hoping to eliminate the Soviets forever. But nobody wins a nuclear war. The casualties on both sides would be catastrophic. Thanks to you, Matthew, Graham Winslow has been handed over to the authorities. We can only hope that sanity will prevail and the Soviets will stand down. Because if the Soviets aren't appeased, there isn't a treatise in the world that'll do us any good. It'll be Armageddon. We'll see you guys for Times Are Changing 5-5. Final one. Okay, we are back. Let's start Times Are Changing 5-5. I've got bad news, Matthew. Despite you having solved my grandfather's murder and handing Winslow over to the authorities, the Soviets aren't backing down. They still intend to launch a nuclear strike. But surely the Americans can appease them. They won't want to escalate the situation. On the contrary, the US has threatened to retaliate, ordering a nuclear strike of their own. We're one step away from nuclear war. What do we do, Matthew? How can we prevent global annihilation? It's a long shot, Matthew, but I think there's a way to end this madness. The Americans and the Soviets don't really want to push the button. They understand it's a no-win situation. The trouble is, neither side wants to walk away and be seen as weak. What we need to do is convince each side that it was the enemy who stood down first by transmitting fake messages of peace from both countries. But we'll need the help of someone inside the US government. I suggest we make contact with that FBI agent, Bucky Johnson. It's worth a try, Marina, but searching for Da Vinci's treatise on time travel is equally important. We must find it while we still have access to the embassy. Which leads us back to Nicoletta Marconi, Matthew. She didn't murder the ambassador, but she sure made things difficult for us. Marconi never told us whether she got her hands on the treatise. Let's find out what she knows. And I'll meet you at Agent Johnson's office, Matthew. We see you managed to sneak away from the ambassador's bunker, Marconi. Going somewhere? I figured it was time I made a gracious exit. Not so fast. We sent you into the embassy to find Da Vinci's treatise. What happened to that? As a matter of fact, I did a little snooping around while hiding in that bunker. I managed to crack open a safe and find what you're looking for. Perfect. Let's have it then. I don't have it on me. I'm not stupid enough to get caught with it. I've left it behind some bushes near the embassy gate. Now I've kept my end of the bargain. I've got to go and see my son Antonio. He's such a little angel. Very well, our deal is settled. But we'll take those coins clinking around in your pockets. Apparently the treatise wasn't the only thing you swiped from the ambassador's safe. Tony Marconi. Which it would later be. There we are. Find anything in those bushes, Matthew? If Marconi sent us on a wild goose chase, I'll... Oh, that locked cylinder looks outright ancient, and it has Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man engraved on it. I bet you the treatise is locked inside. Let's open the cylinder and see what we've got. There we go. Got it. Easy, Matthew. Carefully extract the document and... You've got it! This is Da Vinci's treatise, Ruminations on Time. The conditional time probability formula Kai needs to repair the time machine is contained in these pages. I can't wait to get back to 2029. My first stop will be to pick up some moisturizing cream, then I'm grabbing a pizza. Let's get this treatise to Kai on the double, Matthew. Now let's talk to Bucky Johnson. I'm too busy to talk right now, Officer Matthew. In case you hadn't noticed, we're in the middle of a nuclear crisis. We understand the gravity of the situation, Agent Johnson. That's why we're here. We have a plan to stop this madness. If you'd approached me a week ago, I would have probably had you arrested, suspecting you were the cause of all this. But I know you helped with the moon landing, and you solved Romanov's murder, so I trust you. We're glad to hear that, because we're at an impasse. I believe we can trick the Americans and the Soviets into calling off their attacks. If we transmit fake messages of peace to both sides, they should agree to stand down. You want to send fake messages to the Americans and the Soviets? I don't believe either of them will buy that. Surely you'd have the clearance to write a message to the US president that sounds like genuine intelligence on Soviet operations. Meanwhile, if I can get my hands on an authentic Soviet code transmitter, I can send a message to the Soviets that the Americans are backing down. I still think you're crazy, but we're out of options. We'll try it your way. Then let's get going, Matthew. An ambassador like Romanov would definitely have a code transmitter, which he'd probably keep in that underground bunker. Let's check it out. When I was a little girl growing up in the USSR, Matthew, the Cold War was nearly over. I never imagined I'd be living through a Soviet missile crisis, searching for a code transmitter in my grandfather's fallout shelter. Ah, those pieces are definitely the device we're looking for, but it seems to be broken beyond repair. I hope you can get that machine working, Matthew. The fate of the world depends on it. Getting close to 10 minutes, so hold tight, folks. Got it. You've done it, Matthew. This Soviet code transmitter is working. Now we can send a false intelligence message telling the Soviets that the US are backing down. I'll consult with Orlando and Penelope on the exact language and codes we'll need to use, as well as familiarizing myself with this machine. I don't need to tell you what's at stake here, Matthew. If we get this wrong, we're finished. But here's the surprise. I'm going to do it. I'm going to speed up both things. You were wise to consult us about transmitting a coded message to the Soviets, Matthew. Unless the correct terminology is used in precisely the right order, the Soviets won't believe the Americans have called off their nuclear strike. Exactly. My fluent Russian wouldn't be enough to convince them the intelligence is authentic. Fortunately, Romanov's code machine stores a record of previously transmitted messages, making it easy to determine the passwords and codes the Soviets are currently using. In particular, we found the current numerical sequence corresponding to an official ceasefire, Order 1701. All this being said, we're ready to transmit a message that the Soviets will accept as authentic. Then there's no time to lose, Matthew. Let's regroup in Agent Johnson's office so we can both transmit our messages. I've reviewed your draft message of peace to the Soviets, Officer Matthew, and I'm starting to think we might pull this off. If that coded transmission is received by the Soviets, they'll have no doubt it's genuine intel that the US is standing down. Meanwhile, if I send a similar intelligence report to the Americans, our government should follow suit. You do realize the risk I'm taking, Officer Matthew, sending a message like this. If this doesn't work, I'll be jailed for treason. If this doesn't work, jail will be the least of your worries. Then let's transmit our messages. Ready, set, and send. We've done all we can, Matthew. Now we just have to wait and see how the Americans and the Soviets respond. We're not out of the woods yet, Officer Matthew, but you can put a smile on your face. You did yourself proud. Da Vinci's Treatise. I have good news and bad news, Matthew. Which would you like first? For all we know, a Soviet missile is headed this way as we speak, so we need a little good news. Well, Da Vinci's Treatise is exactly what we needed to repair the time circuits. But the pages with its formula on time travel are missing. You mean they're not there? Totally gone, but it's not the end of the world. Oops, sorry Matthew, bad timing. I'm no scientist, but with the partial modifications I've made using the treatise, I think I can accurately target a jump to Renaissance France. And why would we do that? Because that's where Leonardo da Vinci was when he originally wrote the treatise. Since we don't have the formula here, we could get it from the man himself. Not a bad idea, Kai. The only trouble is, the time machine's power source, the time crystals, are almost drained. We weren't supposed to be traveling around like this for so long. The crystals need to be exposed to a powerful energy source to recharge. Plutonium, for example. Plutonium? Where will we find that in the 60s? Even in 2029, you don't just walk into a store and buy plutonium. You think we should ask the victim's bodyguard? He is a KGB agent, so he's the kind of guy who would know where to get that kind of thing. But we'll have to be shrewd, Matthew. A trained Soviet agent could be a tough nut to crack. What do you want now, Americans? My orders are to return home immediately. I leave at once. I bet you got your hands full. What with the threat of a nuclear strike and rumors of your plutonium stockpiles. Plutonium? Boss already explained to us, to U.S. government, his samples of plutonium in underground bunker are perfectly legal. Of course. The authorized samples are here at the embassy. We completely forgot, Officer Matthew. Zavrzin has no time for your forgetfulness. I must go. The motherland summons me. And here, you can have my burger. I return to my patriotic borscht. Nice work, Matthew. You totally bamboozled Zavrzin into spilling the beans. The Soviets have plutonium right here at the embassy. Let's head underground and do a sweep of the bunker. Oh. There we go. That case has a radioactive warning on it, Matthew. That's promising. We should probably put on radiation suits before we go sifting through this case. I don't want to end up glowing in the dark. Got it. Plutonium vial. This vial of green material is marked plutonium, Matthew. Kai can use this to recharge the time crystals. But don't drop this vial. We've already got one nuclear crisis on our hands. Let's see how long this one is. 6 hours also. Am I going to be speeding this up? No. So for now, I'll get the results tomorrow, and I'll see you all soon. So for now, this is Matthew. Catch you all later. Okay, we have come back. Let's get the results of the plutonium vial. Perfect timing, Matthew. That plutonium you found worked like a charm to recharge the time crystals. I'm so relieved to have the time machine working again, at least partially. She's purring like a kitten. Ideally, she'll be purring all the way to Renaissance France, where Leonardo da Vinci himself can hopefully help us repair the time machine once and for all. But listen, Kai, if we can jump to the Renaissance, are you sure we don't have enough juice to get us back home to 2029? No can do, Matthew. Without Da Vinci's formula to completely repair the time circuits, the 1960s is as far forward as we can travel, but we can jump anywhere in the past. All we need now is for Amy to give us the green light, and we'll be on our way to Renaissance France. Well, we can't go anywhere until we're sure World War III has been averted, Matthew. I'll go report all this to Amy. Check it out, Matthew. Your plan worked. The Americans and the Soviets have backed down. The nuclear threat is over. For real? Oh, thank goodness. That was a brilliant psychological ruse, Matthew, convincing each side the enemy was standing down. I imagine both world leaders are relieved. They just needed an excuse to call it off. Meanwhile, our plans to repair the time machine and head home didn't go as expected, which I guess we're all getting used to by now. We located Da Vinci's treatise, but the pages we specifically needed were missing. Surely that's not a coincidence. Agreed. They must have been torn out by the mysterious time traveler who sabotaged our time machine, stranding us in the 60s. But there's not much you can do about him right now. As Chief Scott always says, we'll burn that bridge when we come to it. For now, Kai's modified the time circuits enough to travel to Renaissance France. We can get the formula from Leonardo da Vinci himself. I gotta say, meeting Da Vinci in person sounds pretty cool, not to mention kings and queens and musketeers. I've no doubt adventure awaits us in Renaissance France, Matthew. Fire up the engine, Kai. We're off in 3, 2, 1. Whoosh. Moment, folks. Okay. Okay. And we're in Renaissance France for 5 cases. May 23rd, which is another Thursday. Moment, folks, again. 4. 5 new ones. 4 new ones. And that does it. Okay, that'll do. I'll see you guys on May 23rd. Well, technically the 22nd where I live. And we'll see how this case goes. So for now, this is Matthew. Thank you for watching another of Criminal Case Travel in Time.